Hi, Moss here, and I have the HiFiMan HE1000 version 2 with me. Now, I was a beta tester for the original version 1, and I didn't end up reviewing the original model because, well, basically everything that could be said about them had already been said, and probably better than I could have expressed it myself. But I was keen to check out the version 2 and see what had improved because there were some negative aspects of the version 1, and considering they're $3,000 headphones, you pretty much want them to be perfect. So, let's go over the design to start with. If you've seen Stack's Lambdas, there's probably some inspiration there, and indeed, as a pair of headphones with a very large and very thin, electrostat-like diaphragm, which is not a pair of electrostats, that's quite a big deal. So you've got a large arc, metal arc here, and your leather head pad, and you can adjust that by sliding it up and down. Much the same kind of thing. What they've improved with the version 2, though, is they've added a couple more spots where it can click in, and so you can account for people who've got very large heads, for example. The diaphragms themselves are very, very large. They are basically everything inside here. It's a very large, very flat diaphragm, again, much like an electrostat, which, the big selling point is that it's nanometer thickness. Now, that could be even if it's in the hundreds of nanometers, that would be still an extremely thin diaphragm, and with magnets on both sides, it has enough set up well enough that the diaphragm can move extremely fast and resolve extremely low levels of detail. Now, even despite that, even despite the metal, it's still a very light pair of headphones. They're extremely comfortable, very lightweight, and basically easy to listen to for many hours. Now, to give you an idea how large these are, this is a pair of HE1000s, if I don't catch them on the desk. And if I just put them side by side, try and line them up, have a glance at my monitor and line them up on the camera, look at the center part of the HE1000 driver, which is already pretty large, and then consider that this entire metal section covers the driver in the HE1000. You see, it is massive. Now, it's kind of, if you see my Edition X review, you'll probably it'd be a bit repetitive, but you can pop the earpads off and just about touch the driver. It just takes up so much room, and it doesn't have a protective film like electrostats do. So, one of the issues that with this design that the original version 1 had is that the attachment points of the arc to the yokes, which is here, was kind of less than ideal. Now, if I put these down and grab my original pair off the desk, here's my big chunky original pair. Listen to this. Can you hear that? It's maybe not so easy to see on the camera, but between the arc mounting point and the yoke, there's a bit of a gap. So this can roll and flex around. While it's not such an ultimate bad thing, it doesn't seem very classy. We're talking again $3,000 pair of headphones. You don't expect that for $3,000. You expect things to slide smoothly and work perfectly. But that kind of didn't look so classy there. One of the other issues was now the design. If we look under the cups, you may have seen the photos before. Where the driver is mounted with green plastic. And there's an outside ring of the assembly itself, which is black plastic. And between both of those, there was something of a gap. And I believe this gap was responsible for some of the negatives of the sound of the HE1000. There was a bit of vagueness in the imaging. There's a little bit of harshness in the mids and the treble. And putting a bit of tape over some of the exposed parts internally helped improve at least remove the harshness, although not the imaging. Now in the version 2, that gap has now been eliminated, and it seems consequently the harshness has disappeared and the imaging has improved vastly. So now while they have a similar, very kind of flat and even tonality overall, the imaging now sounds very precise. It now sounds basically like the imaging you'd expect to get on a pair of $3,000 headphones, and without the issues of the original version 1. So that's why you have this thinner assembly here. Also the earpads have also changed. The earpads in the version 1, again, they have the part that comes into contact with you is got this lovely or reasonable but fairly cheap feeling felt, which is the ultimate dust magnet. And while it does the job, it didn't look as classy as it could. Now they've improved that with some material which does look the part and feel the part and does its job very well. Though I'm not so sure that the earpads themselves made a significant difference to the sound. They are angled to some degree to keep the drivers pointing a little bit forward from your ears. Changing to the housing did seem to make the most difference. Although, again, now they at least look the part. Now, also there's the cable. The original cable was a 4-wire cable, and the new cable is a 6-wire cable. Now, the 6-wire cable, you'd expect in a pair of very expensive headphones for the stock cable to be fine, but I and other people found that the stock cable would seems to degrade the sound a little bit, and actually though I found that out more distinctly in a funny way, not just by using an aftermarket cable, but the stock cable is very long. I mean, it's probably about 3 meters. It's probably about 3 meters long, 2.5, 3 meters long, and so I got mine and I chopped mine in half and re-terminated it and used the spare to make an aftermarket cable for my good old Z7s up there. But when I plugged it in, the Z7s ended up sounding kind of thinner than they usually do. There's kind of lack of bass impact, and that was kind of a surprise. And ended up getting Drew from Moon Audio passed me a Moon Audio Silver Dragon, which I've got here, which I've been using on and off with compared to the stock cable. If you don't know about Moon Audio's Silver Dragon series, they're not a very bright cable. It's which Silver tends to have a bit of a reputation for being bright, and this is not. It tends to draw out the detail better with some headphones, especially those which the stock cable is less than good. At least that's my opinion. Take it for what we will. Now, the stock cable on the HE1000 version 2, it sounds a little bit, whereas the Silver Dragon sounds a little bit more spacious, the presentation with the stock cable, which while it kind of is an unexciting looking kind of rubber coated thing with a very stock, kind of rubber splitter in here, which is probably the least classy looking thing on the whole on the headphones themselves, it does seem to do the job fine, and I do actually find listening with a stock cable to be perfectly good, and it brings the mids forward a little bit more compared to the Silver Dragon, but again, stock cable is fine. So now all the issues to me that the original version 1 had with the yoke and the arcs, with the internal design and the cable and what have you, have now all been addressed. Now I feel, at least design-wise, the HE1000 and now the $3,000 pair of headphones they should have been in the first place. So putting them on your head, they end up, if I just pop these loose, you have a lot of space to move your ears in here. I mean, they're again, massive diaphragm, massive amount of space which to move. Now, if you're not used to the presentation of, say, electrostats, it's going to be hard to kind of describe the sound. The sound is, the diaphragm is so light and the sound is so open and airy, they do have a very electrostatic-like presence. So even while listening to music, if you put your hands anywhere, even out here, you can hear the sound changing because of the waves reflecting off your hands back to the headphones. They're very, very, very sensitive drivers. And the presentation is more like the music kind of floats out from around you into your ears kind of presentation, rather than having like a strong impact. And I think that was one of the criticisms of the HE1000 was, one of the previous top-of-the-line headphones from HiFiMan were the HE6, and people were driving them out of speaker amps to get the kind of impact they could give. But with this, it's a different kind of presentation. It is something that's more electrostat-like. And for me, I didn't want to stick with electrostats and the SR009s because I didn't want to have one amp for one pair of headphones and one pair of headphones for one amp, especially at top-of-the-line prices. So in the end, I wanted something that could drive out of a normal amp, and these can. Now, their presentation and tonality terms is fairly, reasonably flat and even. There's a bit of a treble peak. The bass isn't particularly strong, so they tend to work best with a lot of acoustic music. For example, Dead Can Dance on their Spirit Chaser album, one of the songs, Song of the Dispossessed, starts off with an Australian Aboriginal didgeridoo, and the precision with which the deep notes from the didgeridoo are delivered is such that I felt like I was actually feeling the didgeridoo through the headphones, and I actually put my hands up to the cups to see if the headphones themselves were vibrating, and they weren't, and it was just such a realistic presentation. Even though the bass though wasn't as strong as, it wasn't like a subwoofer feeling, but it just gave the illusion so convincingly of the vibration of the didgeridoo coming through. Similarly, Kodo, which is a Japanese drum troupe, the realistic degree with which drums come through is something I've usually experienced out of something like horn speakers with avant-garde horn speakers and subwoofer system. That's pretty good. However, I think there are a fair few genres where a stronger bass would be much more preferable, either EQing in or just using headphones for stronger bass. I mean, for stuff that which the delicacy is kind of less an issue, and the fine details less an issue. Something like the Mr. Speaker's Ether Flows, Z7s, of course, for further down the scale, or just the Edition X, because the Edition X seems to, as well as being able to power out of portable devices more easily and you know, being more flexible in what it will work well with, seems to have a little bit more impact for music where, you know, hearing the guy sitting at the back of the studio trying to shift in his chair quietly, you know, that kind of stuff where it doesn't matter. Whereas the HE1000s are where you want to hear that kind of super micro detail, you know, the singer's lips parting, all that kind of crazy stuff. And, you know, that they get the real feeling for, you know, how instruments are being played. This is where these are king. However, I did find that they were very sensitive to what they are plugged into amp-wise. So, for example, with our Studio 6, they're absolutely wonderful. So you needed something with a fair bit of grunt and very good dynamics. I have, on review here, it's just out of view in this video, but an Audio GD NFB1 amp. And it's a very good amp, it's got plenty of power, but it's very dead neutral, very kind of like studio dead neutral. And the presentation seems to be a little bit boring, a little bit uninteresting, and doesn't get the most out of the HE1000s, despite it being a very good amp, whereas it worked really well with the Edition X. Funnily enough, AL Audio's Continental version 5 worked really well with these. Despite it being a portable amp, it has a very comprehensive power supply designed just for a little tiny portable amp and a tube gain stage, and even though it does use you know, a headphone amp chip for its main output, the design is so good. Actually, I really enjoyed. I forgot that I was listening to a small portable amp with them, and that's probably one of the exceptions. But for me, in the end, after going through a number of amps, I felt the best result was something with very slightly euphoric. So the Studio 6, the Apex Sangaku, which is slightly, you know, has a little bit of harmonic distortion in there for good listening enjoyment. You know, the big tube amps, it's kind of similar to the good old HE1000 situation where, you know, a good tube amp sort of just took the edge off, and although, you know, the HE800s are a different issue altogether, something you want to just have a little bit of, you know, a little bit of harmonic pleasure in there is what I found I liked best with the HE1000s. And I remember trying the original HE1000. They were a prototype at one of the shows with a full shit audio Yggdrasil and Ragnarok, and I felt that didn't quite match up as well as that, but I don't know if that was because it was a prototype of what was going on there. So that's, the Studio 6 was my best particular combo. Funnily enough, actually, the little Valley 2 sitting up here worked well as well, because it's slightly imperfect in its sound. So something very detailed, very excellent driver control, but very slightly euphoric. That's what I reckon works best with the HE1000s. Now, but with the V2, they've become my favourite you know, acoustic music listening headphones. Now, like, they're now at the level where I feel they make even my favourite Mr. Speaker's Etherflows sound a little bit kind of too closed in, a little bit too boxy, which is kind of ridiculous because they're fairly open sounding headphones. These give that real kind of Stax presentation that I remember from the start, where they make, you know, kind of dynamic headphones in general sound incompetent, which is my first impression of electrostats. So, you know, at first I thought, oh, you know, $3,000, you know, I wish they were like maybe $600-800 cheaper. But now I kind of sort of understand, well, now they're starting to sound, you know, such a good step above the stuff that's kind of $1,800 mark, that I'm not so hesitant now. Although, you know, no one's going to wish to spend $3,000 except someone for whom it's pocket change. Now I just feel that they are a worthy top-of-the-line pair of headphones. So that for me is the HE1000 version 2, and I think I'm going to have to upgrade. These have been just now they're really on the money for a pair of HiFiMan headphones, or for a pair of top-of-the-line headphones. So, you know, that's pretty much it for the HE1000 version 2. And again, I hope you like my video, and I hope you give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in. Please do write comments, criticisms as well. Now I'm open to interesting constructive criticism. And subscribe if you haven't already, because should be making some regular videos with various headphones. And thank you for watching.